Hi, my name is Jake, and I am a bookish drummer. So for today's video, I have a very special book review. It's a brand new release by my second favorite author of all time. I'm of course talking about Billy Summers by Stephen King. Like I said, this is his brand new book. It came out on August 3rd, and I read it in its entirety on August 3rd. It was super good, not perfect, and I'll get to that, but I gave it 4.5 stars. And for anyone who's new to my channel, I actually have a Stephen King ranking video series where I go and rank all of his books in terms of my enjoyment. So his top 75 books, and that's a 10 episode series. And if you're interested, I'll leave a playlist down in the comments below. And for anyone who's wondering where I would rank this in my ranking series, if I were to go back and insert it, I believe this is a top 30 Stephen King book. So it's not, like top echelon Stephen King. It's not top 10 by any means, but it's definitely top 30, possibly top 25. I have to go back and look specifically as to which books are in the middle of that area, but I think for sure it's top 30 material. Like I said, it's a 4.5 star book, not quite 5 stars, but it was an excellent read that I really couldn't stop reading, and I was just having so much fun with it. Now, as to what the book is about, the only thing I knew going in is that it was about an assassin, in that it was sort of his last job, kind of like the last job trope where, oh, I've just got one last job, and then all hell breaks loose. It's kind of that trope, and that's all I knew going into the book, and pretty much that's all I think anyone should know about the book going in, because the book, you think it's going to be about that, but then about halfway through the book, it kind of shifts into another story, and I think that story is very compelling, but I definitely think it'll be a better experience if you don't necessarily know what that second half is about. That's my opinion anyway. So for this review, it's probably going to be kind of all over the place because I haven't really collected my thoughts as much as I want to, but I know for sure that the first half of this video is going to be spoiler-free, and the second half of this video is going to be full of spoilers, and I will definitely have a banner down below to let y'all know when I'm going to talk on full-on spoilers. So I won't spoil anything for this book in the spoiler-free review, and then when I get to the second half, be warned. So some of my basic, more general thoughts about this book is that I loved it. It's terrific. I'm super glad that I read it. And I would generally put this in my top 30. So it is like a terrific Stephen King book, but it's not like top 10, top tier echelon Stephen King for me, in my opinion. But I still gave it 4.5 stars. And I think that if you're a constant reader, this is a must, obviously. I'm pretty sure if you're a Stephen King fan, you went out and bought this book and you're going to read it at some point. And I'm here to tell you that as a constant reader, I love this book. And as a constant reader, I think you'll love it as well. Most of this book is full of stuff that I absolutely loved. And this book, for the most part, is a terrific read. But I'm going to be a little nitpicky here and say that the pacing can be a little clunky. Like I said, the first part of this book is basically what we expected it to be. It's about a assassin for hire, and the first part of the book is all about his last job, and he's going to get paid a lot of money to do seemingly a simple, somewhat simple job of assassinating this person. And so that's basically the first part of the book where that happens, and from the summary, you're almost like, oh, is that going to be the whole book? How is that going to work? But of course, Stephen King is a master storyteller, so that's only the first part of the book. And then you get to the second half of the book, and it's something that I didn't really expect to happen. And I actually prefer the second half of the book, honestly. Even though I did love the first half, the second half of the book introduces a new character, and that character that gets introduced and their interactions and their chemistry with the main character, Billy Summers, was very intriguing and very well written, in my opinion. Speaking of characters, the main character, the character that we get pretty much the whole book from his perspective, is Billy Summers. And I think, honestly, Billy Summers is one of the best protagonists that Stephen King has ever written. I'm not going to say he's the best, but if I were to make like a top 10 Stephen King protagonist list, he would probably be on that list. And if anyone is interested in that, I will definitely make a video on that. And he's definitely one of the best newer protagonists that we've seen in quite a long time. I would say one of my favorite protagonists is Eggard Freemantle from the 2008 novel Duma Key. This is probably the best protagonist we've got since Duma Key. He's a very interesting protagonist. One of his quirks is that he pretends to be dumb, even though he isn't quite dumb. He's actually pretty intelligent, but the people who hire him, they are unaware of his intelligence level. So I thought that was a pretty interesting character trait to have. Another reason why I love this book and I love the character of Billy Summers so much is that the way Stephen King introduces his backstory is very clever. It's very Stephen King-esque, and it was brilliant the way he did it, and I had a lot of fun with his backstory and the way that it's told. I don't want to necessarily give away how it's told because that was a pleasant surprise, and I think for any constant readers, they're going to have a lot of fun with that. Even though his backstory is very tragic, the way that it's told and the way that it's gone about is just very clever, and I loved those sections of the book very much. And as for the plot, I thought it was very fast-paced, very fast-moving, especially for a Stephen King book. I think Stephen King is getting better and better at writing these kind of thriller books. I wasn't a huge fan of the Mr. Mercedes trilogy, except for the second book. I really liked Finders Keepers, but then Mr. Mercedes and End of Watch, yeah, they're kind of meh. But this book is definitely, one of the best thrillers that he's ever written. And there's not really any horror elements in here. There's not really any supernatural elements. So it's definitely more of a thriller. So the plot was good. Like I said, the first half plot is a little different from the second half plot. And, because of that, the pacing can be a little clunky. So towards the end of the climax of the first half of the book, a few chapters after that, it's definitely falling action and it's more of a lull. And it's a little more slower paced, and then you get to like chapter 13, I think, and chapter 14, and it starts to pick up with a brand new plot line. And then after that, it definitely picks up and it's more fast paced. So the pacing is a little wonky, but overall, it wasn't, a huge detraction from the story. I still thought it was brilliant. And for anyone wondering if there's any connections to his other books, constant readers know that Stephen King loves to hide Easter eggs in his books, and he loves to connect his books in various ways in his sort of multiverse that he has. And I'm not going to spoil it here for what the connection is, but there's definitely a hard connection to a beloved Stephen King book. And for any constant reader who gets to that moment in the book, they're going to smile and chuckle. And I definitely loved that part of the book. And I think for any constant reader, they're going to love it as well. And I'll get to more of that in the spoiler section. I don't want to spoil it here because, spoilers. Another aspect of Stephen King that I love to judge is his rereadability factor. A lot of his books can kind of be like middle of the road. They can be good, but they're not something that I want to go back and reread, in the near future. Whereas a lot of his top tier books, I want to reread immediately. So for this book, I believe this book definitely has rereadability. For me, I don't want to reread it immediately, but I definitely see that this book is going to be reread by me a lot in the future when I go back and reread a bunch of his books. This is definitely one that I want to go back and reread. Whereas some of his other books, like The Tommyknockers, sorry, Harry, and, something like, I don't know, like Rage and The Talisman, like I pretty much never want to reread those books. I may, but this book is definitely a book that I want to go back and reread sometime in the near future. And then the ending to this book, I'm obviously not going to spoil it here, but the ending was pretty good. And from the nature of this book and how it kind of like has a lot of different moving parts to it, a lot of stuff that King wants to accomplish, it sort of has like multiple endings, multiple climaxes. And, those were all pretty good. But like I said, that kind of constitutes to having a little bit of wonky pacing because of the multiple, climaxes. But I will say the very ending of the book is very touching and very heartwarming. And the very ending of the book is terrific. So I think that's the end of my spoiler free section. Basically, I love this book. Again, not perfect, but I did give it 4.5 stars. It's a top 30 Stephen King book for me, and this is a must read for any constant reader. It's definitely one of the best newer Stephen King books that he's written in a while, and Billy Summers as a protagonist is one of the best protagonists he's ever written, in my opinion. Definitely the best since something like Duma Key and Edgar Freemantle. I love this book. 4.5 stars. Now we're going to get into more spoiler territory, where I'm going to be spoiling a lot of this book. So if you haven't read this book or if you haven't finished it, click away and come back when you finish this book. So at the beginning of the book, we learn about what Billy Summers' last job is and how he's supposed to assassinate this guy and why he wants to assassinate him because, he's kind of a bad guy. And we learn that he's going to get a large sum of money from doing this, $2 million. And my favorite part of like the first part of this book, before he even, assassinates him, is his cover story. And of course, Stephen King makes Billy Summers' cover story is that he's going to be a writer. He can't help himself at this point. It's just like he's written so many writer characters. Now he's writing an assassin whose alias is a writer. I thought that was brilliant. And of course, that's a brilliant way to introduce Billy Summers' tragic story, his backstory of his childhood. And those were definitely some of my favorite parts of the book. Learning about his tragic childhood and what happened to his sister, and basically how he had to go into foster care because his mother just wasn't a great person, and just a lot of stuff he had to deal with in his childhood, and then him eventually going into the Marines and finding out more about what happened, overseas in Iraq. All of that was just brilliant, and it was a brilliant way to introduce his backstory in a very clever way. I also thought it was an interesting choice to have Billy Summers not really isolate himself or be secluded too much. He's kind of living in this neighborhood and he's got all these neighbors, and I kind of thought that, he would want to stay isolated and just kind of like keep a low profile. But this dude is like having dinner with his neighbors and like going to parties and going to like he's just living it up. And it's just like, okay. And getting closer to the assassination date, he definitely feels a bit guilty about, the friends that he's made and the people that he gets attached to, because, eventually they're going to figure out that he was the one who assassinated this person. And, the kids especially, they're going to feel very weird because this dude kind of moves in and he's real nice and he won that girl, like that prize, and she named it after Billy, and like how everyone's going to feel after he ditches town after assassinating the dude. I thought that was a pretty interesting way for Billy Summers to look at things. And, it makes me question like why he would want to try to get attached to these people if he knows that like, they're going to feel kind of crappy afterwards. Like, oh man, that guy just seemed very nice. And now to learn that he killed this dude, you know. So I thought that was a pretty interesting dynamic. And then, of course, as we get to the assassination date, the book gets a little bit more tense and tense, and it just kind of builds up and builds up to the point where he's actually, going to go through with it, and he's trying to like think of all of the possible scenarios of what he has to do in order to have it go correctly, and all of the disguises he has to wear, and like the stuff that he hides, like he hides a laptop in a dumpster, and he's just got all of this going through his mind. And then we get to the pivotal scene where he actually has to assassinate him. And of course it works. And then kind of the diversion with like the explosions, and just the chaos that ensues after that. And he's got to try to, escape. Just all of that was just brilliant. And just Stephen King, writing a very good plot, which is, not unusual, I would say. But, Stephen King is definitely more character driven. And for him to have like a good plot and a good like tense moment, I thought was very refreshing. And then of course, after all of that goes down, it has a bit of falling action where Billy just goes into hiding, and then he's basically writing more about his time overseas in the Marines, and we get a bit more backstory with that, and that was pretty good. But then we get to, I think it was chapter 13 or 14, where we basically get introduced to the second half plot. And this girl, tragically is date raped, and she's just kind of dumped out in the snow and the cold. And Billy Summers is like, shit, what do I do? And of course he brings her in and, takes care of her. And it's, it's this weird tense moment where it's like, okay, well, I'm in hiding, but this girl should probably be taken to a hospital or the police. And, like, how is she going to react to this? All of that was great. And just all of this, the back half plot that we get from this, I love, because it's something that you can't really expect to happen. Because, going into this, all I knew about it was that it was this assassin's last job. That's all I knew. And so to have that story be kind of the main focus for the second half, I thought was just a brilliant decision. And it reminded me of The Outsider. I don't know if you guys have read that book, but, you start off reading that book and you think it's one way, and then about the halfway point again, it just switches focus. And I think King does that brilliantly. So, of course, we figure out, who this person is that was date raped. It's a 21-year-old named Alice, and she is just, having a rough time, obviously. And Billy Summers is trying his best to contain her because, she could easily just, go to the police, because she eventually figures out who Billy Summers is. And it's a weird dynamic, and I wasn't really sure how that would go down. But weirdly enough, she decides to stay with Billy Summers because, of course, Billy Summers wants to get revenge on the 3 assholes who gang raped her. And that scene where he goes to the dude's, I think, apartment, and he ties all of them up, and just, that scene was pretty crazy. And yeah. And I did think it was an interesting choice to have Alice say that she didn't want them killed necessarily, but she did want them punished, which I thought was a pretty good distinction, because obviously these assholes deserved something, maybe not death, but, what they got, I felt, was a pretty good punishment because they were obviously sexually abused as well. And, they had a picture taken of them in the act. And, if they ever, say anything about Billy Summers, he's just going to put that online. And, obviously they don't want that. So everything just kind of turns around on them. And I thought that was a pretty good way to go about getting revenge. And then, of course, we have the other plot where Billy Summers basically hasn't gotten his money and he's trying to decide the best way to try to get his money back and to get revenge on, not getting paid for the job that he did. And all of that was pretty good as well. And even though, those last few chapters of the book were very good, that's where kind of the pacing gets a little clunky for me because he's got all of these moving parts and all of the things that Stephen King wants to get accomplished. He has to try and get his money back from Nick, and he also has to try to take down this, asshole billionaire who's been raping children. It's just, craziness, and, he succeeds in all of this. But of course, at the end of the book, we find out, his fate. And I love that Alice decides to write an alternate story. At first, when we're reading that chapter, we're assuming that Billy Summers is writing it and that, this is what went down and he's, writing about the story. But then it gets flipped on its head where we realize, oh, Alice wrote the story because that's how she wanted it to go down. But then we realize, oh, Billy Summers is dead now. So like I said, I thought the very ending of the book was very touching, very heartwarming, pretty sad because Billy Summers is dead. And at least Alice gets to live, and hopefully go on to have a fulfilling life after her tragic moment and just what she's going to have to deal with for the rest of her life. Just a very good ending to a very good Stephen King book. Oh, and I forgot to mention that the hard connect that I was talking about, of course, if you've read the book and you're watching this spoiler section, is The Shining. Who could have guessed that? Yeah, the minute that I heard that they were driving through Colorado, I was like, wait a minute. And then they specifically mentioned Sidewinder, and I'm like, okay, I see what you're doing here. And then, of course, they mention directly that there was the Overlook Hotel and that it, exploded and that it was supposedly haunted. And you're like, okay, that's straight up a hard connect. Like, well, damn. And then kind of a weird part was Billy Summers had the photo of, the hedge animals, and that, he had the photo and like he would put it up and he would think that they were moving just like they did for Jack in, the Shining book. And then there was one moment where he clearly like took the photo down, but then later it was back up there. And so that's kind of like a weird supernatural element of the book that really, it didn't really need to be there and it didn't add too much to the story. But obviously, it's just Stephen King having fun with his fans, right? His constant readers. And that was just a very cool part of the book. The last thing I wanted to mention for the spoiler section of this book review is that basically my two favorite characters were Billy Summers and Alice. The rest of the characters were pretty good, but they're not nearly on the level of Billy Summers and Alice, especially Billy Summers. He's, like I said, one of the best protagonists that I've read from Stephen King in quite a long time. And Alice, even though she doesn't get as much screen time as Billy Summers, obviously, she's still a terrific, wonderful character as well. All right, spoiler section is over. Yeah. So anyway, guys, that's my book review for Stephen King's newest, brand new book, Billy Summers. I loved this book. Did not think it was perfect, but it was a 4.5-star read, top 30 Stephen King book, and just, I had such a great time reading this book. Like I said, I read it in a day. I woke up really early and just started listening to the audiobook, and then I got this book in the mail, fairly early, and then when I got that, I obviously unboxed it and just started listening to the audiobook and reading the book along with it. And I had a terrific time with it. And one of the best newer Stephen King books that I've read in quite a long time. So what did you guys think of my review for this book? And also let me know if you plan on picking up Billy Summers soon, or if you've already read it, please let me know what you thought of the book in the comments below. And as always, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for watching and have a terrific day.